Hey gang, welcome back to United Taste of America and our trip around the country to find the very best food dishes that tell the story of our history as part of this semi-quincentennial year, this year, our 250th birthday here in 2026. I am Rick K. Jones, your guide on this fun and educational journey. I want to remind you first that you can find our vignette series on YouTube, United Taste of America on YouTube, or iHeart's YouTube channel. That's where we have the vignette, where we've gone and actually filmed the making of all the dishes. We've been to, as of this recording, we've been to 41 of the 50 states, and we'll be finishing them all. And that vignette series is really a lot of fun. I hope you will go take a look at that. I have mentioned to you in both the, really Francis Rosselli brought it up in our segment on Connecticut at Pepe's. He talked about Jane and Michael Stern in a book called Road Food that really put Pepe's on the map and the white clam pizza on the map. And then later I told you that I had found Woodman's of Essex in Massachusetts from that book, Road Food. Well, folks, this week, I was going through some things at home, and I found the original. I found my original copy of Road Food, 1992, signed by Michael and Jane. Folks, I wore this sucker out. In 1995, I moved my family to London. We had sold our agency. I had gone to my boss, Frank Craighill, the late Frank Craighill. Frank died earlier this year. A wonderful man, wonderful boss. I went to him after a year and said, Frank, I'm bored. And he said, well, Rick, will you go run Europe? I remember calling Charlotte. Charlotte said, you son of a bitch, you told him yes before you called me. I said, oh, honey, I would never do that, but you'll love London. But in order to get there, it took about 5 weeks for all of our stuff to travel across the pond by ship. So we took a trip around America, a 4.5-week trip. We visited multiple states. I think we ended up going to 17 states. This was the Bible. We only ate in restaurants in this book, Road Food. No fast food, nothing, all road food. Just a great, great book. The sad thing is I was looking at it earlier this week. A whole bunch of the places that I loved have closed. Obviously, for one reason or another, COVID did a number on a lot of restaurants that just couldn't last. And in many cases, multi-generations, the other generation didn't want to eat there, or didn't want to run the restaurant, and so they've gone away. But this is a classic book from Jane and Michael Stern that really allowed me to fall in love with American cuisine and was really the basis for what has become United Taste of America. Today is all about one of our other 13 original colonies, and it's also, in my opinion, one of our most beautiful states. It's a very small state, but a very beautiful, beautiful state. It's the state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire has a wonderful combination. They have a very small but unbelievably beautiful coastline. And then they have amazing mountains in the White Mountains. It is just an amazing state. And it's a state, because it's so small, you can travel throughout the state in one day in a lot of ways. Like I said, it has a beautiful coastline and some of the most amazing mountains in the country. It also has, what I love, 4 incredible seasons. I mean, it has, wonderful springs with wildflowers and all kinds of mountain laurel, all kinds of things that grow. Great summers with the beach and seafood and all that. Spectacular falls when the leaves turn, and then incredible winters. And the winters are great for things like maple syrup and skiing and tobogganing and doing all those kinds of things. A wonderful state, wonderful seasons. New Hampshire, again, like so many of our colonies, was founded with a large land grant. And so there was a land grant given to 2 guys, John Mason and Ferdinando Gorges in 1622. They were given this land grant. Well, that land grant was much of, if not all of New Hampshire and all of Maine. Well, the two partners, as often happens, had a falling out. And when the partnership collapsed, Mason kept New Hampshire and Gorges kept Maine. And they became separate colonies. Now, the state was long known for a lot of border issues. What is Maine? What is New Hampshire? What is Massachusetts? What is Canada, even? And so you had lots of fighting, lots of skirmishes, lots of stuff, lots of major conflicts between the French, the English, and the Native Americans in that area. And so it took a long time to finally find the borders of New Hampshire in that colony. There was only one major Revolutionary War battle fought during that. That was in the harbor of Portsmouth at a place called Fort William. Fort William and Mary, named for William and Mary, obviously the King and Queen of England. But New Hampshire has always supported us in so many ways, and they sent a lot of patriots to fight in the Rev War and a lot of people to fight in the American Civil War. As I mentioned, it is one of our smallest states in the Union, and it was originally primarily a textile industry state that was really between the Civil War and the First World War. It was a hub of mills. Again, all of New England was mills. But because of the number of rivers and streams, and remember this, when you build a mill of that era, you had to be next to a stream, because you had to power the mill. And the mill was largely powered by water, by a water wheel that created that. And it also allowed the runoff, or when you heated materials for the mill, to run off and be cooled in a stream. So it served two different purposes. And there are lots and lots of rivers and streams in New Hampshire. And so there's so many little small mill towns that were a part of that. When you hear the word New Hampshire, what do you think of? Well, if you like politics, a lot of you think about the political primaries, because the New Hampshire primary is always one of the very first primaries. Usually the first primary is Iowa, but it's not a primary. It's a caucus. Iowa, you vote for people that vote for you. Not so New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a true primary. It's the first primary of the presidential season, and it's a primary for both the Republicans and the Democrats. And there's so many legendary stories of elections being won or lost because of the success or failures that they had in New Hampshire. If you've ever read the book Primary Colors or seen the movie Primary Colors is about Bill Clinton's campaign and how he really established himself to get the Democratic nomination. The legendary story is he ate in every donut shop in the entire state of New Hampshire and met literally everybody. And there's a famous scene in the movie and in the book where he's in this donut shop like at 3:30 in the morning. There's only one person there, the person that's making the donuts, and he's talking them up, chatting them up, trying to get them to vote for him. It's a great scene from that. And so they're known for that presidential primary. They're also known for outdoor recreation, a lot of educational institutions. There's a lot of boarding schools in New Hampshire, lots and lots of secondary school, and there's one Ivy League school. It's the smallest in number of enrollees. The smallest Ivy League school is in New Hampshire. It's Dartmouth University. Dartmouth has a fascinating history, too. Dartmouth was founded by the Congregational Church to educate Native Americans. It was originally founded to educate Native Americans in Christian theology. And then they started training Congregationalist ministers, and then the evolution, it became the Ivy League school that we know today. New Hampshire is also known for a heavy biotech industry today. Again, a lot of these small towns, a lot of these little small mills were converted to biotech office buildings and plants. Some famous people from New Hampshire, Horace Greeley. Remember Horace Greeley? He said, "Go west, young man." He was a newspaper man. One of my favorite authors, one of my favorite books of all time is a book called Catcher in the Rye. It's written by an author named JD Salinger, and JD Salinger is from New Hampshire. Daniel Webster, New Hampshire. Mary Baker Eddy, the founder of Christian Science, the Christian Science religion, is from there. And one of our Supreme Court justices, David Souter, is from New Hampshire. Only one president came from New Hampshire. It was our 14th president, Franklin Pierce. We got a pretty cool musical playlist as always. Got a song from Bill Morrissey called Live Free or Die. Live Free or Die is actually the tagline of the state of New Hampshire. When you get and see a New Hampshire license tag on a car, that license tag has the motto, Live Free or Die. There's a song from Andy Leftwick called Leaving New Hampshire. A song called The Granite State of Mind. A lot of granite mined in New Hampshire. It's from the Super Secrets Project. A guy named James Parkington wrote and recorded a great song called Emperor of New Hampshire. And then one of my favorite Barry Manilow songs is called Weekend in New England. It was about taking a weekend trip to New Hampshire. The foods in New Hampshire lean towards all things seafood, plus a whole lot of things made from apples. You got seafood on the coast, you got lots of apples in the central and western part of the state. Seafood, lots of lobsters, lots of lobster rolls, lots of fish, lots of clam and fish chowders, steamed clams. Have a number of interesting fishing packing houses and commercial fishing places that what we call fast freeze seafood in the Portsmouth area of New Hampshire. A lot of the trawlers that go off and fish for cod and other things come to New Hampshire for the processing as part of that. You know, winters are cold, and so they really are famous for their chowders, but they have as good a fish chowders as they do clam chowders. Now, me, I combine them. I love to make a white fish and clam chowder combination. What about the apples? They're famous for hard cider. They make more hard cider in America, in New Hampshire, than any other place. Famous for apple pie, apple cider donuts. Like their neighbor Vermont, they harvest a lot of maple syrup. One of the most famous yogurt brands in America is from New Hampshire. It is the Stonyfield yogurt brand, which is one of my favorite brands of yogurt. They're famous for something that I've never seen anywhere else in the country. They make candy, chocolate candy in the shape of mice. Little tiny mice. Go throughout New Hampshire to little chocolate or candy stores, and you find all these little candy chocolate mice, which is pretty interesting. They're famous for what we call the New England boiled dinner, okay? Classic winter dinner, usually corned beef brisket with cabbage and winter root vegetables like carrots or sweet potatoes or turnips or rutabagas. They also sometimes make it with ham, but most of the time it's with corned beef brisket. Again, cold night, hearty food, really, really good. They have a lot of freshwater lakes and freshwater streams throughout New Hampshire, and so they have a lot of freshwater fish. They're known for their largemouth bass, and usually what they do with bass in New Hampshire is what I'd like to do with my bass. They fry them. Somebody asked me one time if I was, they know I'm a fisherman. They said, Rick, do you like to catch and release? And I said, absolutely. I like to catch mine and release them in a hot vat of boiling oil. I like to catch fish and eat fish, and they have some of the best largemouth bass fried food in New Hampshire. It's interesting because they have so many small towns. They do a lot of fundraisers, like with their local fire departments or local charitable, Kiwanis clubs. In the winter, they do these classic New England boiled dinners. So you come to the firehouse and have a boiled dinner, but in the summer, they do fish fries with the fried fish. And so when you ride through the little towns of New Hampshire, you see a lot of the locals that say this is the date for the New England boiled dinner or for the fish fry. Years ago, I had a chance to go meet the famous documentary filmmaker Ken Burns. Ken Burns is one of my favorite filmmakers. Made the Civil War, the Roosevelts, Hemingway, jazz, baseball. Recently, last year, had the Rev War. Ken lives in New Hampshire, in Walpole, New Hampshire. And I had a chance to spend a day with Ken Burns at his farm several years ago. This was before the Civil War came out. And I remember his wife made me soup. We had a big homemade soup. It was a cold, early spring day. I think it was late March when I was there. It just turned spring, but it wasn't spring in New Hampshire the last week of March. It was still winter for this southern boy. And I remember it being really, really cold, but I spent the day with him there and had one of the best bowls of soup that I can ever remember. Again, we mentioned that they have a very small coastline. When we later talk about the coast of Alabama, that's a very, very small coastline. In fact, that is the smallest coastline in the United States. The second smallest coastline is New Hampshire. But for such a small they catch a whole lot of lobsters. Now, there's been decades and decades of lobster wars between lobstermen in New Hampshire and lobstermen in Maine fighting over whose waters belong to whom. But they catch an enormous amount of lobsters in New Hampshire, and there are a lot of really great lobster pounds in that little small coastline. But what they're really known for in New Hampshire is lobster stew. And we found what I consider to be the best lobster stew in all of New England, all of New Hampshire. It's at Newick's Lobster House restaurant in Dover, New Hampshire. Again, another one of these great roadhouse, road food, classic, real estate. The great restaurants on the coast start with great scenery. They're usually on a point someplace with just amazing scenery. And this is no exception to this. Had the chance to spend the day with the patriarch, Jack Newick. We discussed his past, and that I found out that the lobster stew dish that they serve at Newick's was actually his mother's dish from the 1920s. It's a great dish. Newick's Lobster House is really a New Hampshire institution, rich history tracing back to 1948 when Jack's daddy, Captain John Newick, who was a former Navy man, began selling lobsters from a small roadside stand on Dover Point. Dover Point is spectacular. You're looking at a river, an estuary, where the lobstermen are going to then go out with their boats and catch the lobsters and come back to this place. Just one of those spectacular locations. Again, he was a Navy man, fought in the Second World War, came home, went back to work. And he was a lobsterman, and he started selling his extra lobsters at a roadside stand right there on Dover Point. And, you know, what had happened was, a lot of people don't know this, at the time of the colonial times, lobsters were considered trash food. You fed your pigs lobsters. And really it was kind of that way until the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age, when we talk about Rhode Island, we're going to talk a long time about the Gilded Age because of Newport. But at that time, lobster and lobster dishes like lobster bisque and lobster thermidor became very cultured dishes. And then in the Roaring 20s, in the 1920s, it's when pretty much everybody discovered lobsters. But what came after the 1920s? The Great Depression. The Great Depression. And believe it or not, a lot of lobsters were consumed during the Great Depression. Why? Because you could go catch them. You could go catch lobsters. And so during that period, that's when you started catching lots and lots and lots of lobsters. So then we fight the Second World War, and John Newick comes back and he starts selling lobsters. And then he, from that, built a restaurant and started serving other kinds of things. Today, the restaurant is enormous. I mean, it's spacious. It's got beautiful windows. In fact, the entire restaurant has gigantic windows to see that great view. And they hold a lot of wedding receptions there. They hold a lot of civic lunches there, all kinds of stuff. Family continues to run the business. They serve fresh seafood, you know, from all over the coast. And it's just a great place. The place actually burned down a few years ago, and it burned down right before the season started, which is Memorial Day, and they built it back in time to be open for the 4th of July. That's amazing to think about that. In 5 weeks, they built this gigantic restaurant back. Jack Newick took over the business from his dad. Jack's in his late 80s. I just love spending time with Jack, former Coast Guard officer, kind of a hero. I saw some clippings of some of the rescues that he had made of some ships off the coast of New Hampshire when he was in the Coast Guard. Had a lot of medals to prove it. I'm a big sports fan. This guy is the quintessential New England sports fan, you know, big Boston fan, talks with that New England accent, you know, loves the Red Sox, loves the Celtics, loves the Bruins. And we just had a field day, you know, talking about some of the great athletes of his era. He was quite a high school athlete himself, great basketball player. And we had a great time that day. Today, the restaurant serves, again, great seafood, this great lobster stew, but they also serve ice cream. They've built an ice cream parlor there. Now think about it. Get you a lobster, you know, start with a big bowl of lobster stew, then get you a whole lobster dinner, and then finish it up with ice cream, and it doesn't get much better than that. Lobster stew is really pretty simple to prepare, but it takes some nuance, and the real nuance is in the bisque. It's in the bisque. Now, they would not give me their secret recipe to the bisque, but I like to cook, so I got a pretty good idea. The richness of the disc comes from the shells. Okay, so this is how you make lobster stew. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to steam the lobster. You're going to steam it in seawater. Okay, then you're going to let it cool, and you're going to pick it. You're going to pick the claw meat, and the tail meat. You're going to put it all together. You're going to chop it up. Then you're going to saute that meat in butter, a lot of butter, like a whole lot of butter. Okay, look, you're not there to have diet food. You're there to eat. A lot of butter sauteed. Then you're going to take the shells, and you're going to take the shells and some spices they wouldn't tell me about, and some other ingredients, and you're going to cook with the water the shells to make that seafood stock, that rich tasting seafood stock. You're going to strain that stock, and then you're going to put the lobster in the bottom of the bowl. No. You're going to fill that sucker, that whole bowl, you're going to fill with lobster meat. Fill it. Then you're going to pour that hot bisque on top of it. Then you're going to add one more little pat of butter on top. And you're going to eat it with oyster crackers. You go some places and you get lobster stew, and you can't find the lobster in the stew. You can't find the stew in the lobster. I mean, it's all lobster meat. It is the best I've ever had. It was so good I wanted to bathe in it. Newick's Lobster House, Dover, New Hampshire, lobster stew. Okay, how about some other great places to eat in New Hampshire? Here are my three from me. Obviously, there are lots of restaurants in New Hampshire, but these are three where I've been, and I think you would enjoy going there. The first one is in a little beach resort called Seabrook, New Hampshire, and it's called the 12 Ocean Grill. What do you want to get? You want to get a lobster roll or maybe a fisherman's platter. Fisherman's platter's got scallops, shrimp, haddock, and onion rings. All the basic food groups, right? It's also kind of a neat place in that they have golf simulators. So you're having a beer, you're having a lobster roll, and you can, work on your irons there for a fun time. So it's a cool place. Second place in New Hampshire, one of my really, really favorite places is Jumpin' Jay's Fish Cafe in Portsmouth. This is one of the best seafood restaurants on the East Coast. It's just an amazing place. They have wonderful, rich, decadent lobster bisque. They have a very unusual dish. We've all had a banh mi sandwich, a Vietnamese sandwich. They do a banh mi fried oyster sandwich. So it's fried oysters with all the other pickles and condiments and all that. It's really, really good. They also do a haddock piccata. I love chicken piccata or veal piccata. This one's phenomenal, haddock piccata. And then they have a catch of the day. They'll have about 4 or 5 really, really fresh fish they've gotten that morning with about a dozen different sauces you could pick. So you can get it grilled or broiled or blackened or whatever with a bunch of sauces. The last one is Mary Kelly's Irish Pub. It's in the White Mountains up in what we call North Conway. A lot of great restaurants in the White Mountains, a lot of tourists and these kind of things. But this is a classic Irish pub. Great grub, traditional Irish food. One of the things when you don't know what to get the Irish sampler. It's 3 things at one time. Beef stew, plus chicken pot pie, plus lamb shepherd's pie, all on one plate. Then you go have a nap. They also make great fish and chips, all washed down with what else? Or nice cold Guinness. Those are 3 from me from New Hampshire. So that's a wrap on New Hampshire. We'll see you next week from the very historic state of Virginia.